Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a connect the dot, a mind blown moment, a mushroom cloud moment, a new author to read, a new book to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links will be in the description box below this video. And I really want to humbly thank everybody who has gotten me to this point where I am right now. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. If it wasn't for half of the viewers that watch my channel, I'd be homeless. I would have been kicked out of my house. So I really want to thank those who continue to stick and help me be here. It means a lot. Ooh, I found this book and it was on sale really cheap. But I'm going to read it off the computer since this is very tiny text. The Realms of the Living Dead. I love this book. But I have another goodie too. This is huge. This too is very fine print. The Message of Aquaria. The significance and mission of the Aquarian age. What? Yeah, my thoughts exactly. And I know many of you are like, they're on it. They're on it. That's just all I have to say about that. They're on it. So we left off on chapter 15. And we're going to start chapter 16, Independent Methods of Communion. We'll see what this is about. Hang on. I have a co-host, remember? Morgan the cat. She's chirping over there. Maybe I'll get her to come say hi. I don't have a place for her anymore to say hi and to look in the screen and be cute. Luxuries of moving. Quote, Abraham saith unto him, they have Moses and the prophets. Let them hear them. And he say, Nay, Father Abraham, but if one went unto them from the dead, they will repent. And he said unto him, if they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. End quote. St. Luke. Quote, if death is not existent, sorry guys, hang on. Quote, if death is not extinction, then on the other side of dissolution, mental activity must continue and must be interacting with other mental activity. End quote. Raymond Lodge. It's in or through the mental realm of the astral world that we should strive to contact our departed loved ones, for communication with those who have left the physical world is not only possible, as it is now almost universally accepted by scientists who are at all posted as to the investigations of the Society for Psychical Research. To say nothing of the testimony and evidence presented by all the great teachers, occultists, and mystics throughout the ages, but such communications is perfectly legitimate when conducted according to the laws of the independent method. It is quite erroneous to think that our friends pass on so quickly and become so engrossed in their own affairs that they pay little attention to those left behind. The fact is that they remain in touch with us and are often as interested now in our affairs as before passing on. Indeed, now come much closer to us, understand our thoughts, and read our hearts in a way that is impossible while inhabiting and limited by the physical body, and requiring the clumsy and often misleading methods of speech or writing to express their ideas and desires. Pause. Truth. My father died in 2005. He took me some time to figure out how he was coming to me, but finally I got some help. Then I was like, oh, that's so obvious. My father leaves me signs all the time. So does my mother. Many of you might have people, friends, family members who have crossed over and given you signs. You're just not cognizant of it, or some of you are. Songs on the radio. There's no mistaking that. Dimes, pennies, signs on the wall that you're just like, what? For example, my aunt was getting hip surgery, and she was in a hospital in New York. She's not from New York. And my mother's name was on a door. And she's like, wow, that's a sign your mother's with me. I'm like, absolutely. Cardinals, other birds, insects come as signs if you acknowledge them. So they do and are a part of our lives, whether you like it or not. And if you didn't have a good relationship with a parent, I didn't have the greatest relationship with my father. They go upstairs and they heal, and they understand what they were doing wrong, and they learn from those lessons upstairs. So they are in partly helping you throughout the stages of your life, no matter when they have passed. They're always watching, and they are always with you in energy. Mind you that. And that's just my take on it because of my abilities. You don't have to believe me. Anywho, hence it is just as heartless and cruel, to say nothing of being impolite, to refuse to recognize their presence when left and to drive them away, as it would be to shut the door in their faces when they came to see us while in the physical world. Even the more spiritually advanced do not leave their friends and loved ones selfishly to pursue their own spiritual development. Many of them, the great schools of the lodge, and work consciously in some capacity to help spread the teachings in both the astral and physical worlds, being especially concerned, of course, in giving all possible love, help, and comfort to those near and dear to them. No soul who has once vowed allegiance to the lodge and offer his or her life to the service, but will not give, not one but many lives to its work, until they have obtained mastery and the race has been spiritualized and redeemed. To turn away from and refuse to recognize our departed loved ones is usually the result of a fear of the astral inculcated by those teachers who, having had little practical training or experience in properly contacting the astral world, know nothing but its dangers. The dangers are terrible and very real, as we have explained in detail in previous chapters, and we have no desire to minimize them in the least. But those who have comprehended what we have written thus far should have conquered all fear, and should and can learn perfectly how to protect themselves from the undesirable influences. To such, contacting the astral world should be no more dangerous than crossing a busy street or passing saloons, dance halls, and brothels. The dangers are all there in every city and are very real, but no one is obliged to enter a saloon or a brothel. Mind you, this was written in the 1900s. Just saying. Who does not desire to do so? Just so in the astral world, just as on earth, you will be drawn to that with which you affinitize and desire. Hence, if the desires are kept normal and the thoughts pure, and when surrounded by the protecting power of the Christ light, as we shall explain in detail, there need to be no danger. As we have already said, the departed ones who have reached the mental realm can communicate with us only mentally, and those in the lower realms of the astral should be taught how to communicate only through the independent or constructive method. There are several natural branches of independent method, all of which are normal and natural avenues of consciousness, although all belong to stages of evolution beyond the average stage of humanity today. Any method of communication is classed as belonging to the independent method, which does not involve control of any kind. That is, going into a trance or permitting any other consciousness to control either your body, even your hand to write, your mind, or your words. At all times, you must be fully conscious of what you are saying or doing and use your own discrimination as to whether or not you are willing to stand back of your words and acts. For we are always responsible for our words and acts, whether they are the result of control or not. And we must choose what we say and do. Free will. Therefore, the independent method is one in which the person retains full consciousness of the physical world and what is going on around him. Retaining full control of all his senses and mental faculties, he is able to judge of what he experiences and is free to react to those experiences as he may choose. The chief among these methods are telepathy, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, inspiration, intuition, the empathy, and avesha. Each of these demands the book for its proper explanation, but here each can only receive the briefest mention, scarcely more than a definition. For further information, see special books on each subject. That's funny. Telepathy is the direct exchange of consciousness and ideas between mind and mind without any physical means of expression, such as speech, writing, etc. According to the author who originated the word telepathy is, quote, the communication of impressions of any kind from one mind to another, independently of the recognized channels of sense, end quote. This is true thought transference or mind reading. This transfer may take place between two or more persons, both of whom are in the flesh or both in the astral, and also where one is in the astral and one is in the flesh. It is perfectly safe method because the one receiving the thought of the other can judge it and act accordingly. Discernment, there you go. Clairvoyance is simply the development of the ability to see the astral world, as well as in the physical. Those who are clairvoyant, clear-visioned, can also see reflected in the astral that which is transpiring in the physical world, no matter what the distance. Such persons can also see the symbolic visions projected. It's me. Either by the higher self or by the masters of wisdom for their instruction, warning, or guidance. They can also see the events and thoughts pictured in the aura of a mortal, hence the vogue of clairvoyant readings. But since the aura of a person is sacred and given each one that perfect privacy may be enjoyed, it is just as rude and uncouth to enter the aura of a person unasked as it would be to enter the private chamber unmasked of one who forgot to lock the door. A master or a refined spiritual helper will always knock on the door and ask permission to enter. Hence, do not wonder why the masters do not read your every thought. You might be sorry if they did. You must invite them. It's true. As the proper interpretation of what is seen is all important, a reading by an ignorant and untrained clairvoyant is of little value. Indeed, it may be distinctly misleading, even pernicious, especially if it is accepted as certain truth and unalterable fate. Clairvoyance, therefore, is to be used and accepted only subject to your best judgment or discernment. Clairaudience is the ability to hear what is transpiring in the astral or at a distance on earth. The clairaudient, clear hearing, can not only hear the voices of departed friends, but also nature sounds, elementals. It is legitimate, but must also be subject to good judgment. In fact, it cannot be too greatly emphasized that in advanced spiritual development, it is most important to cultivate discrimination, good judgment, and common sense. Clairsentience, it's me, also, is the power of grasping the reality and truth of things through mere contact. This also includes psychometry. Through this faculty, you sense the truth of what you hear, see, or feel. It can also be used on earth to sense conditions and states of consciousness around you. On entering a room, for instance, a clairsentient person will know the character of conversation or thought that has been held up to the time he entered, or that he may have been carried on in years ago. A phase of this faculty manifests as the homing instinct, whether in birds, animals, or men. A person who has this faculty knows what another is going to say almost as soon as, or even before, the first word is spoken, and often knows better than the speaker how it should be expressed. Hence, such persons have an almost uncontrollable desire to correct the speaker and are very inattentive and poor listeners. In this phase, it overlaps intuition, yet we make a distinction. The danger of this faculty is that the one using it may let personal bias enter into it and use it, thus making good judgment difficult. Those are what you would consider mental mediums, the all-knowing. They get the knowing, the heaven. Intuition is soul guidance or tuition from within, from your own Father in heaven. It differs from clairsentience in that in the latter we merely sense the thing, while intuition, our own divine higher self, has impressed it upon our consciousness or taught it to us. It also manifests as conscious, which discriminates between right and wrong. It is a faculty above others necessary in dealing with all phases in the astral world. Inspiration is the breathing into your consciousness of the spirit. When inspired by a scene or by music, the spirit of that scene or music enters into you and reveals to your consciousness its real significance or soul. You can also be inspired by an astral friend, a spiritual teacher, by a divine being, or by abstract ideals. The degree of your inspiration depends upon how perfectly your mentality can express it. You can be inspired by any realm or world, either to paint, sing, speak, write, or any other form of expression. But you must use your own judgment first as to where the inspiration comes from, and second, whether or not you desire to respond to it. This must not be confused with the astral control. In the astral control, you are a mere puppet or a tool, having little or no control over what is said or written or done, even no knowledge of it. While in inspiration, you are a conscious messenger of a higher power. Many of us are those. Inspiration overlaps telepathy in those cases in which the inspiration comes from some person or teacher by means of telepathy, but is direct when the consciousness reaches directly to the realities, spiritual verities, and ideals in the higher realms, or worlds which you desire to represent. Theophany is the direct manifestation of the gods or spiritual teachers to man by actual appearance. This appearance can be manifested only to a specifically trained mortal. Theophany could, therefore, come only from a divine source, never from an astral entity. This is the method by which most of the scriptures of the world, including the Christian, have been transmitted to man. For instance, the spiritual teacher appeared to the spiritual vision of St. John and said, quote, "What thou seest, write in a book," end quote. What was written was not written under control or through automatic writing, but independently while the transcriber was in full working consciousness. There are many other references to the independent method in the Bible, showing that it was the method universally used to give spiritual teachings to mankind. Quote, "The surest means of obtaining knowledge of the gods and of their will was through their direct personal manifestation in visible theophanies," end quote. But there is the chance of some astral entity calling himself such a divine being and seeking to impress teachings on the unwary. Hence, we must always demand in the name of the living Christ who it is, as was done by all inspired writers. For we read of their challenging in the words, quote, "Who art thou, Lord?" end quote. So often repeated in the scriptures. Avisha is a particular relation between a chosen mortal trained and perfected for this special relation through many incarnations in a divine being or a more than mortal spiritual teacher for the purpose of presenting to the world a particular truth, message, or philosophy. This later method sums up and includes the other 7 methods of independent communion. For a true Avisha has all the above faculties developed. There can be no deception here, for their works are they known. All above mentioned methods of communication require special conditions and special training for their development, either in this life or in the past theophany Avisha, requiring training of the most advanced in spiritual character through many incarnations devoted almost entirely to the spiritual life and its requirements. Among these methods, telepathy is one which requires the least training, in which can most quickly be developed by the average seeker. It is therefore the one we advocate as the most practical and satisfactory for those who are not born with some of their astral senses already particularly open. For all these methods are classed as constructive because senses of man in the astral world and are therefore but a continuation of the constructive process of life, which can never tend towards balance, self-control, and perfection, at the risk of being tedious to the many students who have followed our various books and teachings for years. We must repeat in this connection that we have said elsewhere concerning the difference between the independent or constructive method and the subjective and destructive method. Quote, "Still another way in which the doors are frequently broken open is by placing yourself in a passive, non-resisted state and making a demand for psychic experiences or sending for a development, as it is called. In this practice, you are placing yourself in such a negative state that any entity dwelling on the lower astral plane can help you break open the doors. This either destroys the doors or abnormally forces the development of the psychic centers instead of unfolding them as a natural accompaniment of spiritual growth. When results have been thus obtained, since the doors are not under the control of your will, they are open to any entity who desires to obsess you. Even if the obsessing entity is a disembodied friend or good moral character, your condition is not altered, for he must be near you constantly to protect you from fiends. This is what takes place in ordinary subjective mediumship. As we said in letters from the teacher, quote, the difference between spiritual communication and subjective mediumship is a difference both of vibration and method. The right way to contact the higher planes is to rise the vibrations of your physical and psychic bodies and their centers until they vibrate in harmony with the keynote of the soul plane, at which pitch no evil thing can come nigh thy dwelling. Truth. As we can only become aware of thing when some part of our organism responds to its vibration, the psychic must have the power and proper development to come into harmony with the spiritual plane, ere he can contact the masters or respond to things which touch upon a vibrate within the octave of their keynote. Ra wasn't wrong. Quote, on the other hand, spiritual communication, the psychic, through spiritual living, loving, thoughts, and helpful actions in many lives, must build into his or her character enough of the divine principle of compassion for all humanity to raise the vibrations of all the bodies, either temporarily or continuously, to the note of spiritual love to which the masters of compassion naturally vibrate. On the other hand, subjective mediumship, the psychic, through various means, either mentally by stilling the thoughts, or physically by various yoga practices, such as gazing at a crystal, a black spot, or sitting in a constrained position through breathing exercises and many other still more objectionable practices, have been gained the power of stilling the physical vibrations and becoming negative, or when through the oily sheaths, having become weakened or destroyed, the psychic is naturally negative. In such a state, the physical atoms not being held together by the vibratory rhythm to which they naturally respond, slow down and fly off to such an extent that any discarnate entity clothed in atoms of and vibrating to the note of the astral plane, which is next to and in its lower degrees overlaps the earth plane, can gather up and clothe himself in sufficient of the physical atoms, thus thrown off to temporarily vibrate to the keynote of the physical plane and become temporarily recognized on the plane. Pause. In this awakening movement, everybody's like, raise your vibes, have vibes. You need it. It's very important. Why? Because they are nasty, negative mother effers chilling in the ether. And when you're giving off some bad juju, they're picking up those atoms and those thought forms and the will that you are an energy ball. They're picking it up, and here they are. We're human. We're human. And it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to get angry. It's okay to express yourself. But you got to learn how to alchemize. You have to learn how to get and snap yourself out of it when you're having one of those moments. You just need to scream, get it out, and then just let it in release. Raise your vibration, especially in this now time. Too many people, too many, are being attacked at this current time on our earth plane because we are shifting density. We're shifting the vibratory octave where we are, and we're going up. Many of us are going. And the problem is these little mother effers want to come with us and they'll hide in all kinds of guises. And many people are not cognizant, and you don't need to be psychic. You don't need to be a medium. You don't have to have any special abilities for them to attack you and come through you. So please, all of those who watch me, this is going on. This is real. I'm seriously doing a lot of work in this area clearing negative thought forms and energies and vibratory states that are not appealing and are not kosher, to say the least. So just mind yourselves, raise your vibes. Sorry guys, my back is killing me. It's so important. It's really important. We need this. We need to do this. Quote, in the first instance, the whole desire of the psychic is to uplift humanity. He is filled with compassion for the race and desires to give himself as a willing sacrifice to bring enlightenment to the world. No, that's so many of us. This is the true spiritual development. The teachers and masters who he contacts do not see the little individual difficulties, or if they do, they understand the law and know that it all is working out for the best, that only wisdom can really help. Given wisdom, love, and sustaining help, the disciples can and indeed must work out their own personal problems. As Paul says, quote, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, end quote. Dark night of the soul, for those of us who know. All spiritual communication is uplifting, and the spiritual atoms which the psychic has contacted and drawn into his body will rejuvenate and strengthen the physical, uplift the mental, and advise him on the path of spiritual attainment. Quote, in the second instance, by giving up the command over the life forces and throwing open or breaking down the doors of the sacred centers, the vitality is drawn upon and the atoms thrown off are used to bring the physical plane the denizens of the astral. These may be pure or vile and are attracted to the medium in exact ratio to the state of the atoms which he or she is giving off during the negative sitting. If you understand this, and the fact that most of the entities contacted upon the astral plane are not spiritual beings, but merely men and women with their most dense and outer garment, the physical body, removed, you will understand the danger of giving yourself to their use. They can only come to earth as they left, clothed in the physical atoms. The fact that to manifest on the physical plane, they must steal physical atoms from the medium and sitters is proof positive of this. The first is the constructive, the second, the destructive method of communication. In no case unless they are masters, in which case they will manifest quite differently, as we'll explain later, are the different from the people on earth, except that they are functioning in a body composed of finer matter. You cannot always tell what of the above mentioned methods have been used by the teachings received, for even in subjective mediumship, the teaching may be of a higher moral character, just as some friends might give you a high moral address. But no matter who the entity claims to be, he will not be a master of wisdom if the subjective method is used, for no master of the right-hand path ever uses that method. In this case, it is not a question of what teachings are given, but how they are given. One absolute test as to which method a psychic is using and from whence the messages come is the effect on the physical body. In spiritual communication, the psychic is clothed upon the spiritual atoms, which self-effacement and compassion has drawn to him, and he glows more spiritual. If after the experience his vitality is augmented and a peaceful, happy, and vigorous feelings remain, even for days afterward, if life seems fuller, trials easier to bear, and love more abundant, you can rest assured that he has risen above earthly things and has been clothed upon the spirit and has been brought back lessons from the benefit of humanity. This is the form of communion with the higher planes that should be desired, but do not strive for it. Let it come as a natural growth resulting from a life filled with loving, unselfish thoughts and deeds. That right there. Quote, in subjective mediumship, however, owing to the loss of physical atoms and vitality, the psychic is depleted and weakened and soon shows not only in bodily health, but also in mental power. His nervous system is innervated, his mentality is dulled, and a great stumbling block has been placed in his path. If after communicating, the psychic is exhausted, tired, nervous, cross, fretful, and uneasy, even for days, you can rest assured that he has allowed some astral entity to absorb his vitality and contact him by the second and destructive method. The student can quickly tell whether he has contacted an advanced spiritual teacher or merely a disembodied mortal by the feeling which results, even if his intuition does not reveal it to him. When the spiritual teachers are contacted, the spiritual force of their auras will be felt like a fire, so that instead of the chill felt on contacting astral entity, a wave of warmth, life, and vitality will seem to well up from within and surround him. This warmth is also often so great as to make the body break out in perspiration, and the wave of love force is so great that the throat chokes with emotion and the eyes fill with tears of joy. This physical reaction is really a protection to centers in the physical body, for both divine love and divine life are aspects of fire. And if the love nature is not sufficiently purified and developed to withstand so great an influx of divine fire, its centers might be greatly damaged if a physical reaction was possible. You would hesitate to lend your body to any of your friends on earth to do with as they please. And the mere passing over makes no difference whatever. They are able to use their astral faculties, which are a little finer than the physical, but that is all. They are just as spiritual advanced as when on earth, just as much as the laws of life, but no more. Never give them any form of worship. Simply take such advice as they have to give, as you would take their advice when upon earth, subject to your own good judgment and common sense. All these advanced steps brings with them their own dangers and temptations, for no matter how high we climb, we'll always fall until we, like Jesus, become one with the Father. Yet we can conquer every temptation and forestall every danger if we live in the divine consciousness of the one life and walk humbly hand in hand with the Christ and not let ambition overwhelm us. Cray cray. Pretty cool though. Chapter 17, Subjective Methods. Quote, at first I took only your arm to write with, yet I could not do it long at a time without using your own vitality, end quote. Letters from a living dead man, Barker. Quote, it may be well to give a word of warning to those who find that they possess any unusual power in the psychic direction. Self-control is more important than any other form of control. To give up your own judgment and depend solely on adventitious aid is a grave blunder and may in long run have disastrous consequences. Raymond Lodge. Although the authors are not spiritualists, and this is not a work of spiritualism, it is deemed advisable that the chief subjective methods of communication with the astral world receive brief mention. Under subjective methods, we class all those methods which subject the consciousness, mind, or body to the control of the will of another, especially those methods which cause the ones to controlled to be unconscious of what is being said or done through them. It is a subjective method in which such persons know what is taking place, but are powerless to prevent or even alter the procedures because they have given over the control to another intelligence, either disembodied or embodied, as in hypnosis. While it is true that many worthy persons practice subjective methods, who in themselves are honest, earnest, sincere, and pure, and much helpful and comforting information may be transmitted through such methods. Nevertheless, we deplore and strongly discourage the use of such methods for three main reasons, although there are others. Remember, we do not deny either the honesty of the medium, although there are many frauds, as we shall explain later on, or the correctness of the communication, but we object to the method used. In the first place, putting one's body under the control of another makes such an irresponsible puppet, a mere tool to work the will of another, and without the power to prevent the most outrageous lies from being told or to decide whether the actions performed or the teachings given by such a control are desirable or not. Such control, instead expanding the consciousness and developing the intellect and heart qualities of the medium, stifles mental growth and makes him dependent on his controls or guides for understanding and direction, instead of upon his own judgment and the guidance of his own divine soul within. The same objection applies to those who continually seek guidance from their departed loved ones, instead of using judgment and common sense and learning the lessons which life here in the physical world is meant to teach them, praying for enlightenment and guidance from within. When help is needed, such persons rush to the nearest medium and seek advice from their astral friends. This also takes away initiative, undermines judgment, and makes the recipient more or less of a puppet, acting not according to his own rational process, but on the mere dictum of another, an essentially irrational process. In dealing with our departed friends, we should clearly remember, as we explain in Letters from the Teacher, that they are not angels or spiritual beings, nor have they suddenly become endowed with the wisdom. They're merely men and women with their most dense outer garment or overcoat, the physical body, removed. Since they are using their astral senses, they can see farther ahead than those on the earth plane. But such advice as they have to give should be taken just as you would take their advice while on earth, subject to your own good judgment and common sense. Often their desire is to help alleviate earthly conditions, but their advice, while valued in many cases, is still largely in accord with worldly standards. In fact, their activity is often like that of well-meaning but over-meddlesome friends on the earth plane. In no case are they different from people of earth, except they are functioning in a body composed of finer matter. They have the same desires, habits, modes of thought, tastes, prejudices, and friendships they had before taking off the garment of flesh. And in fact, their personality is no more altered than in our personality different when we remove a hampering overcoat, except such changes as may be due to their progress after leaving the physical world. Therefore, a knowledge of the laws of the astral world, together with common sense, balance, poise, and purity of thought, are more important for one who attempts to communicate with the astral world. That's really true. Look who came up to say hi. On the 16th of April this month, she's going to be 18. Old lady's going to be 18. And I'm going to be 40. Just wanted everybody to see co-host. She hasn't been around. So I wanted everybody to say hi to old lady, co-host number 1. Co-host number 2 never ever comes down here. And if he does, it's like really quick and he goes upstairs. So say hi. Hello. I know I'm nuts. I'm the crazy cat lady. So it is what it is. She left. She's on the meditation bee bag, FYI. In the second place, the process of control is essentially a degenerating one. In a normal and independent contact with the higher worlds, All the currents of magnetism, astral currents, and even of consciousness itself are flowing in the direction of normal evolution and unfoldment, outworld and upward from lower worlds to higher, from lower rates of vibration to higher. But in the effort to bring a disembodied entity down from a higher world, from the higher octave of vibration of the astral world, down to the lower octave of the physical world, as is necessary to control the body of the medium, all the normal currents are reversed. The centers by which the medium contacts the astral, instead of being opened from within outward as in normal development, are now forced opened without inward, and the result is similar to that which occurs when a door is forced open to the wrong way. Its fastenings are broken and it swings idly on its hinges, easily pushed open by near anybody passing by. Therefore, just as the upward and outward flowing currents are constructive and upbuilding, so their reversal is necessary, destructive, and disintegrating. The proof of this is plainly evident in the depleted condition that so universally follows the use of these methods, a condition testified by all investigators in psychic research. In the third place, the subjective method has a similarly degenerative effect upon the entities, thus drawn down from their place in the astral into the dense earth magnetism, earth conditions into the earthly body of the medium. This effect is also testified by many investigators, as for instance, Raymond, referring to the difficulties found in controlling the medium, says, he, the astral control, wanted to speak through her, but he found it very difficult. He started and then he didn't feel like himself. What worries him is that he didn't feel like himself. Furthermore, such control is a temporary obsession, which frequently becomes more or less permanent. The suffering and torture, the anguish and despair which mediums undergo under such circumstances is fully described and substantiated by Dr. J.M. Pebbles himself, a veteran spiritualist, well known in spiritualistic circles around the world, in his book, Spirit Obsessions. Full subjective control is usually preceded by a transitional state called trance, and the two terms control and trance are often used without distinction. There are several other forms of trance, however. Two should be distinguished here as not being subjective but independent. One is where the sensitive person simply leaves the body in a state of passivity or particularly suspended animation, while he or she ascends into higher worlds in search of the information desired, as long as the body or consciousness is not controlled by another, but the body is simply left tenantless. This is not a destructive process. A second form of independent trance is that experienced in true ecstasy. In this condition, the soul has entered into realms of light and glory, where the states of consciousness are so spiritual and exalted that the body and its consciousness is transcended and hence remains apparently lifeless. On the return to normal consciousness after these flights, far from being inverted and depleted by the experience, the sensitive is filled with life and energy, joy and happiness, for he has brought back with him something of the glory and spiritual life force he experienced in the higher realms or worlds. This is latter in the condition so frequently referred to as Bible as being caught up in the spirit. When St. John was in the spirit of the Lord's day, he was not under control, nor was revelation given through automatic writing of any kind. He was simply in a ecstatic condition during which the Lord or spiritual teacher told him what to write, and he wrote it while in full possession of all his faculties, able to refuse if he wished. The phenomenon of materialization is the most depleting and degenerating of all. In this procedure, the medium goes into a dead trance and allows his physical counterpart to be withdrawn and molded into the likeness of the departed one who desires to manifest. In the case of English medium Mr. Ellington, it is reported that his dense body shriveled perceivably, and that the same phenomena has observed with Mr. Husk, whose dense body became too reduced to fill out his clothes. Mr. Ellington's body once was so diminished in size that a materialized form carried it out and presented it for inspection to the sitters, one of the few cases in which both medium and materialized form has been visible together in light sufficient to allow examination. The method requires so much vitality from the sitters and so degenerating to the medium that it cannot be too strongly condemned, as it variably has been in all scriptures and by all spiritual teachers. Another form of communication must be mentioned here, as it usually conducted in a subjective way, that is with the medium either under control or in a dead trance, one in which the astral body is withdrawn from the purpose of performing the phenomena, but it's sometimes conducted in an independent method, namely trumpet speaking. In this procedure, usually conducted in the dark, but rarely in the light, through the peculiar development of the medium, the departed ones are given sufficient physical magnetism and astral force to enable them to speak audibly through a trumpet or megaphone. This is perhaps the most satisfactory form of message from the lower realms of the astral world, for in an honest and properly conducted trumpet seance, the seeker can recognize and positively identify the voice and manner of speaking of the departed one. Where this method is used without the medium going under control or in a trance, it is legitimate, although not advisable to repeat at frequent intervals. For a certain amount of magnetism, life force, and physical atoms must be drawn from the sitters to reinforce that of the medium to secure satisfactory physical results. Under the head of subjective and destructive methods, we must also include the Ouija board, planchette, and automatic writing, painting, etc., for they are all forms of more or less partial and are easily developed into complete control. That those who are not familiar with it may recognize it, the Ouija board may be described as a small lap board, such as sometimes used by ladies when sewing, on which the letters of the alphabet are arranged in a semicircle along the further side, with the words yes and no in the further corners. A small three-legged table, about the size of a hand, accompanies the board. The board is placed either upon the lap or upon a table, and those who are to operate it lightly place the tips of their fingers upon the little three-legged table. Questions are then asked of the invisible entities in the astral. These are answered by those entities controlling the hands of the one touching the little table, to such an extent that it is pushed along the board from letter to letter until it spells out the answer to the question. The planchette is a similar arrangement, except that in place of one of the legs, the little table contains an upright pencil, which writes the words instead of spelling them out. It is quite evident that someone whose fingers touch the little table must be sensitive enough for the astral entity to control his or her arm sufficiently to make the table move in the direction of the letter desired. Manifestly, this is a form or first step in the process of control by an astral entity. And as the operator has no means of knowing who or what the control is, he or she is throwing open his or her aura and body to the entrance and control of any obsessing elemental, criminal, or demon from any realm who may choose to be passing or who may be attracted by the force displayed and the desire sent out. We have known this method to be the beginning of terrible obsessions and so advise most strongly against its use. Although it is often possible for well-meaning friends to come in touch with those who left behind through those methods, yet owing to the ease with such impersonation and fraud can be introduced and great difficulty of being sure that the one controlling the board, what he claims to be, is extremely dangerous. I won't even mess with the Ouija board. Nope. Mm-mm. A lot of people play it as a game. But unless you know how to do an entire cleansing on the area where you're working, how to shield and protect yourself on a daily basis and make that a habit, and know everybody else around you that is doing the same exact practices and purposes, it's nothing to be playing with at all. And that's the truth. And I put those posts out on my private Facebook all the time. When it becomes Halloween time, all the kids want a Ouija board to play with, when in fact, it's opening up a portal to a realm that they're unknowing. And the truer case is for, people who do ghost hunting and stuff of that nature. They don't realize that if you don't have a spiritual practice, and no, you can't keep calling priests to throw holy water on you all the time, because that only works to an extent. But you shouldn't be calling your priest every time you go on a ghost hunt. You should know spiritually how to protect yourself. Just saying. Automatic writing is performed by some astral entity taking control of the hand and arm of some sensitive person and using it to write a message, the contents of which may be quite unknown to the person so used. This, of course, is also a form of control, hence is necessarily depleting, and is testified by nearly all who have had the great experience with it. Although if the control understands the law, the depletion may be partially counteracted and made beautiful and interesting messages giving, as in the case of Patience Worth, letters from a living dead man. It is also possible to write inspirationally, but this must be distinguished from automatic writing. In such a case, the sensitive will be fully aware of choosing words and expressions. For instance, the inspired thought may come in language so beautiful that the intellect of the one receiving it cannot do its justice, and he may consciously try to express it in more simple terms. In such a case, although it may be inspired by another, it will not be astral control, hence its legitimacy. And I'm going to leave it there, my friends, because the next chapter is on the telepathic method, and holy shit, we need to tackle that in another video. All my thoughts that I pause on are my expressions, perceptions, perspectives, opinions of what I hold true in this reality, in this simulated matrix. We all might have different takes, feelings, and observations, and that's okay. We all resonate to different things. So please understand, it is okay to not agree or disagree with the things that I find in these books. I want to thank all of you for coming and listening. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Really helps me out. And if you get anything from my work, please, all the links will be at the bottom of the screen. Love donations are very appreciated at this time. Sending each of you protection, light, love, and shielding. Please get in some practice to heal yourself, tackle your shadow self, tackle your traumas, energetically try to vibe high, look at cute animal videos, that helps. Try to make a shitty situation into a positive one. Objectively look at things. Look down without bias or judgment why people are reacting the way they are. Don't take things too personal. And I hope those things help, because we need a lot of healing in this world. Sending each and every one of you love and light. Until the next time, guys. Bye.